for joining us on The Skeptic Psychic, where we delve into ancient societies, the ghosts, the paranormal, UFOs, all looking at it from the perspective of the true believer and from the skeptic perspective. Joining me, my partner, my co-host, my sibling, Kimber Rodriguez. Myself, I am Richard Gregg. And again, let's look into being the skeptic psychic.
Hi. How you guys doing tonight? And welcome once again to the wonderful, weird world of the Skeptic Psychic. Delving into one of the most interesting things in the world. Namely, what we like to talk. Now, with me tonight is the most wonderful, intelligent, smart, funny, and beautiful woman in the eyes of her husband. Ladies and gentlemen, my sister, Kimber Rodriguez.
Hello, how are you this evening?
I'm fine. How are you this evening?
Uh, I'm okay. My doctor changed up my meds, and so I've been kind of like doped up all day.
Mm.
Also have a little bit of a sinus infection, but that's allergies in Texas. It's that time of year.
If you want to play in Texas, you gotta have allergy pills.
Yes. Which reminds me, there's a new commercial on TV now for HEB, which is our grocery store here in Texas, and it plays an old country song. It plays I saw miles and miles of Texas. So yeah, every time I hear that commercial, I'm like singing along.
Underneath the wilderness skies, I saw miles and miles of Texas.
Yes,
Gonna live here till I die, which you really didn't.
yes, which we don't want to get a strike for copyright. So
No.
we will stop it there. So what are we talking about tonight?
Well, when you get that feeling where you're sure, positively sure, you're surely positive, positive that something in your history you remember straight down to the core. However, not as all what they seem. In
Yes.
fact, some people would say that sometimes history may have been changed. We're going to be talking about the Mandela Effect.
Yes, I had a joke there, but it kind of, you know, it wouldn't make sense now. The punchline wouldn't have kicked so hard. So I'm going to
Right.
skip the joke and let's go ahead and jump into the topic tonight. But before I do that, I want to remind people that if you are watching on YouTube or Twitch, to like and subscribe, and on YouTube, hit the notification so you know when we are doing videos. If you're listening to a replay, please leave us a review on Apple Podcast or a rating on Spotify. And what kind of reviews do we like, oh dear brother
We
of
like a
mine?
one. We like two. We like three. We like four. But most of all, we love 5 stars. Yes, we
Yes,
do.
we do love 5 stars, but we'll take what you give us. Also, if you leave a review, we will read it on air. If
And
you
we'll
have,
sell the rest.
well, what?
We'll sell the rest.
Oh, we'll sell the rest.
Yes.
Okay. And if you have a question, a comment, or anything that you want to share with us, whether it be a story or a show idea, or if you'd like to be on our show, you can always email us at info@skepticpsychic.com and check out our website while you're there, skepticpsychic.com. We have some great things to check out. So let's go ahead and kick off this Mandela effect. I'm sure that's why our
Well,
guests are here,
before we
and I'm
do,
sure they're
before,
okay.
before we do, I do want to bring up that the coronation of King Charles the Third happened yesterday.
Yes, actually, early this morning.
No, it happened early yesterday morning.
That's right. That's right.
But what I wanted to bring up is that many people have pointed out seeing a hooded figure walking around the building.
Really?
Yes, I put it up on skepticpsychic.com.
Oh, that's what that was supposed to be? That was the
Yes,
coronation that he was.
that was the coronation.
Interesting. I will have to check that out. Yes, I saw your post, but I didn't read it. For those of you who don't
Some
know what we're
people may
talking
believe that was Merlin.
ah, and you can check that out in our group Skeptic Psychic on Facebook, right? You posted it
That
there?
is correct.
Interesting.
So I wanted to bring that up because that is kind of almost an odd event.
Yes, I wonder how long he'll reign as king, though, because he's pretty up there in age himself.
Yes.
So, but anyway, let's get into the Mandela effect. That is why people are here. That is what they're waiting for. So let's go ahead and entertain them with the Mandela effect. Sound good?
Alrighty. Sure. I just wanted to bring that up because I found that more fascinating because that was England, and with the crowning of a new king, could it possibly be a Camelot? Could they find the Sage Perilous again?
I will check it out.
All right. Well, now the Mandela effect or mass false memories, it's been coined by Fiona Brooms in 2009. She created a website dedicated to the various misremembrance of things she discovered around her. The name itself came about the first mistaken memory of the that inspired what was then speaking with others' attendance at a conference of how Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s. Surprisingly, those who spoke remembered the same event happening, even though the truth is that South Africa's former president died in 2013, which means that at the time, Ms. Broom and the fellow conference attendees were discussing the tragedy of his death. The man himself was still alive and had been alive. He'd been, even after he'd been released from prison in 1990, after being in prison for 27 years. The year of the conference, the United Nations added a new international holiday to celebrate his birthday. So Mandela was still in the news and still doing good in the world. But somehow, the large part of the world's population thought he was long gone. Dead and buried, as the words of it may seem. Many even clearly remembered his death on the news and a speech given to him by his widow. Quite a big thing for the world to have wrong. But the Mandela effect spans a wide range of things, some small, some still very much still in the media today.
Now that's interesting because I personally remember when Mandela was released from prison in 1990. I remember this big, big to do and this big hoopla. Hi, Shelly. Shelly, our researcher, has joined us. But I definitely remember there being a big to do and a big celebration when he was released from prison. So it's interesting how a lot of people actually believe that he had passed away in prison when my biggest memory of him was his release. What were your thoughts on that?
I remember, you know, him being released from prison, and I remember uh, basically hearing that in 1985 that he was still in prison.
But you don't remember him passing in prison.
Exactly.
Now, the question is, why do we have these memories? There are several reasons that can help us to understand this phenomenon, but not at all.
Do 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 do.
Now, first of all, our memory is not held in a chronological or linear manner. Instead, our memory map is somewhat similar to a computer and has been defragmented. So we've got memories all over the place, kind of like a computer does. Not only that, imagine when you're a child and you first discover that something is hot, say the stove. In fact, I remember as a child being told, "Don't touch the stove is hot," and it hadn't gotten red yet. So I told my mom, "No, it's not," and I put my hand right on the hot burner. I don't know if you remember that or not because you were
Yes, I
there.
do.
And
You
so,
slammed your hand onto it.
yeah, and I had a big red mark burn on my hand, all right here, the shape of a burner.
Yep.
Yes, it was not fun. But
No.
I learned, do not touch the stove.
Nope.
Your next memory may be kisses from your mother to make it better. No, I remember her saying, "I told you not to do that. I told you it was hot."
Yes, our mother, when it came to kiss it, make it better, she was more or less. She's like after the fact, but
Yes, she's going to scold you first and then she's going to kiss you.
yes.
Um, However, that's not how recall works. The hot stove will fit into a section reserved for things that are dangerous. And, perhaps you grow and you will add a fear of heights or being rocked back and forth in a Ferris wheel car. Again, for me, it was climbing up a tree, looking down and not being able to get down, freezing in terror and calling dad to come get me.
Yes, I
Um,
also remember climbing up after a tree after a drunk man asking him to get down.
oh, I remember that one. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Yes, that was a fun one. Now, it's interesting because even though these things were years apart, um, we still kind of, the way we remember them is not exactly that they were years apart. Um, and it could be that that new fear of heights is stunted over the danger. Uh, so while the rest of the day may be present, what we focus on that day is that horrible incident, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So now you may ask yourself, do I always get things wrong? And I always say memories have an unfortunate way of being influenced by other events or someone else's memory that will influence what yourself remembered. Allow enough influences over the years, and the memory, rather than just being slightly wrong, can change completely. Our minds also have a mechanism that's been labeled as confabulation. Memories with gaps in them. Maybe the child fell asleep in his father's arms and was carried around for a while. Confabulation fills in like the missing information so that your mind can make a sense of what's there. The child may remember being picked up and while in a carnival and awaken later and his father's carrying him around. The child's memory has no idea how he once was in one place and then it was suddenly someplace else. The family in the days to come may talk about how they visited the animal barns or the petting zoo, something that the child was asleep, but over time his mind will start inserting his into his family recollections into his own memories. As an adult, he could one day look back at this memory and now remember seeing the horses in the barn, perhaps even petting them on the nose. It's not deliberate, nor a lie or misdirection. The adult may not even be aware of it, but his memories are no longer a true reflection of what just happened.
Interesting.
Yes.
This is why when an incident happens, those who are in charge sit you down separately and as soon as possible to ask you what has happened, because our memory does change over time. So by sitting us down and talking to us about it right when it happens, they get a better understanding. Also, listening to several different witness testimonies of a traumatic event are are important so that they can get the different factors of it. Um, like, say you witness an accident that happened between two cars in front of you. If
Hmm.
if you're being asked, do you see the yellow cat that ran out in front of so and so? instead of did you see a cat? What color was it? And what did you do? This can change your memory. The first question primes your brain to suggest that a yellow cat did run out into the road when you may have never even saw an animal at all. Or perhaps there was a brown cat or a black cat, but it was sunning itself on the sidewalk and never ventured into the road. And it's growing worse with the prevalence of the internet and how quickly speculations and gossip are being beamed at us through social media and news platforms. So this stuff is like going out there and we're reading it. And, so all these mass memories are being sort of created, I guess you could say, if that makes sense, by things going viral on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now, newspapers of yesterday and the internet sites of today often get details wrong when rushing to be the first to publish a story, and only afterwards do they give up an update. The story printed on a woman's murder and her husband is missing, and presumed the killer can create an instant bias against the missing spouse. Vice versa. He may
Hmm.
be later found and cleared. It could have been a great gardener who committed the crime, but her husband's reputation will never be the same, as he's interred in our little minds as a killer. Lives have been ruined by these such misconceptions before.
Hmm.
Some theories even spout the theory of a multiverse beyond counting, where though some fancy schmancy quantum physics will remember our alternate reality, each choice, movement, or reaction that everyone throughout all time has made results in yet another parallel universe coming into being. And just writing up this script, we've created countless new universities with each keystroke, each word we are speaking. It's out there, but just be glad you aren't the one who has counted, cataloging each new universe as it pops out into creation.
So are we getting into Marvel Comics now with the multiverse
Yeah, well, actually, I think it was DC that did it first.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah. I don't know much about the DC multiverse. All I know is the new one or the Marvel one
Hmm.
that's been going on lately. But I digress. Love
Yeah.
ADD. By the time the Titanic survivors were picked up from the sea by the Carpathia, sorry, words hard, those in the lifeboats had talked with each other over what had actually seen. By the time the inquiry began, the survivors had a wide array of memories that were not accurate to what really happened. Many would remember the ship sliding beneath the waves in one piece, when in reality she split in two before going down. Stories of the captain swimming to a lifeboat with an infant he rescued in his arms, passing the child over to the lifeboat occupants, and then swimming bravely away instead of climbing into the boat himself ran rapid. Could have been the spirit of the captain, because I know he
Maybe.
went down with the ship.
Hmm.
So you never know. Maybe they did see it. Even between those different lifeboats that wouldn't have been able to see what was happening elsewhere. There is no official record that the captain did this, but given a wide range of witnesses who claim to have personally seen this, then he had personally rescued numerous infants, handing them over to almost every lifeboat one by one. Captain would have been seen in the water. The boats were easily spread out over a mile or more of the ocean. So this is obviously a false memory. It's just that false. Or it could be a ghost, people. It could be the spirit of the captain saving these infants so that they would not catch the same day. Same.
Yes.
That is my theory. I believe this. If you agree, let me know in the comments. But they do ask, why was the memory false here? Well, it's just an alternate timeline theory would certainly fit here, but perhaps it was just a survivor's mind attempting to understand a horrendous tragedy. There was so much chaos at the time, and passengers would mostly be scared and uncertain of what to do. The idea of being witness to some of this heroism and calm order can be understood.
Now, history itself is full of such little things. Too many misconceptions based on heresy and false memories. How many of us would raise our hands in class and say that Alexander Hamilton was one of the presidents of the United States? Anybody?
I think he was, wasn't he?
While he was one of the founding fathers of our nation, he never actually ran for president.
Really?
Instead, he worked under George Washington, even helping George write his farewell address. He did, however, eventually campaign hard against John Adams, who was up for re election. History shows us that Hamilton mostly did this because John Adams did not like him, and he called him the brat bastard of a Scotch peddler. So why do you think many people believe that Alexander Hamilton was president of the United States?
That's a
It's
good question.
because probably being a member of Washington's cabinet and being an outspoken advisor on American, freeing itself from British rule. Given the popularity of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway play, there'll be a new misconception cropping up in years to come. Given that, while fairly accurate, there is definitely some dramatic licensing involved as well.
That is really interesting because I could have sworn Hamilton was one of our presidents.
Nope.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at the list of presidents again because I could have sworn he was in there like the third or fourth or oh no, that is very odd.
Yes.
Now, what about these things? What about these things have no real reason for being remembered? Um, we do have a few Mandela effects for you that have become so prevalent recently. And for one instance, look at Mickey Mouse. Mickey has never worn suspenders, though many will tell you that he did in Steamboat Willie. In fact, they will tell you that in Steamboat Willie, they know he had suspenders and actually snapped them during the cartoon. There is no real explanation as to why this misconception exists, but it is easy to disprove with a little cartoon marathon. And I do remember him snapping those suspenders in Steamboat Willie, so I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that cartoon. Or was
Hmm.
it? Or did was it interdimensionally changed? Is the question.
Maybe.
Or speaking of the controversy that Goofy is actually a steer, which seems to be based mainly on the fact that he occasionally dates a cow named Clarabelle. Hey, just because Goofy is into interspecies
Species
relationships does
relationships.
not mean he is a bull. He is a dog. He has floppy ears, just like Pluto.
Yes.
Um, and just because he does wear clothing and shoes and talks does not make him any less a dog than Pluto.
I mean, he has been described as his own best friend.
There you go. And another fact, if Goofy was a bull as opposed to a dog, instead of having those floppy ears, he'd have pointed ears, or he'd have more like cow ears. I can't think of how cow ears look like now, but he'd also have, being a bull, horns, which he does not have.
Yes.
Yes. Now, surprisingly, Pluto appears to be the one with the higher IQ, if just barely. Though we aren't sure if this one can be chalked up to false memories, but rather unclearness on the part of Disney writers or the animation team, or just people not understanding interspecies relationships and think just because he's in love with a cow, he's got to be a bull. Come on, people, let love be love.
Yes.
Yes. But in no true order, here are just a few more of Mandela effects for you to think about, and let us know in the comments below again which one you can resonate with or your thoughts on them. The first one being Pikachu. For you of those that don't know, Pikachu is a Pokemon, which was a Japanese animated cartoon. And a lot of people remember Pikachu as having a black tipped tail. In reality, it's always been solid yellow. Now, I personally, again, do remember him having that black tip on his tail. Um, and I think I've even seen like little dolls or figures with it, but that could have been made incorrectly. And then we have a actor named Sinbad, who is a hilarious comedian, and it was thought that he played a character named Shazam in the 90s. Now, even though the actor denies this fact to this day, that he has never been offered a role or filmed anything with this character. In fact, he was filming the movie House Guest at this time this supposed movie came out. People still are saying that this was made. And, there is a part in the poster for House Guest where his head is coming out of a mailbox. And this could be mistaken for a genie bottle. But that's the best anyone could come up with. And in honesty, there was actually a movie with Shaquille O'Neal that came out in 1996 where he played a genie named Kazam. So it's very possible that people are getting Kazam mixed up with Shazam, and they're getting Shaquille O'Neal and Sinbad mixed up. So that could be a possibility. But the actor has come out and said, no, I've never made this movie. I've never even heard of this movie. And people are still insisting that there was a movie by that name.
Well, with that, I'm going to have to say, I remember seeing the movie with Sinbad. I don't remember the name of it, but he did play a genie. And the first scene he kind of appears in is these two little kids were rubbing an old lamp, and he pops out and starts lecturing them about, keeping them in there for so long. And he's like, wait a minute, you're not so and so. And like, well, so and so was my mother. And he's like, oh man, I'm sorry about that.
That was Kazam with Shaquille.
No, this was Sinbad.
Okay.
Because it was a little boy and a little girl. And Kazam, it was it was kind of, you know, but
Yep. Yes. We do have somebody that agrees with you on YouTube that says, I'm not mixing up Kazam and Shazam. I can tell you the plot of the movie from another reality.
yes.
Interesting. Huh. You have somebody who agrees with you there.
Yep.
Well, why don't you tell us about that little Kazam did not have a brother and sister in an attic. Interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Well, why don't you tell us about that curious monkey?
Well, you want to talk about George?
Yeah.
I
Tell us.
remember George having a tail. Now, poor George isn't safe from controversy either, as many claim to remember him having a tail. But in the cartoons, as well as the books written and illustrated by H.A. Ray, George has always been tailless. Pretty sure the side effects that he's the sibling monkeys typically have tails. So therefore, George should have one. Before, perhaps the inspiration photos Ray had in his studio showed a tail, but he chose not to give one to one of the most curious monkeys.
Now that's interesting because I do remember him having a tail and swinging around on it.
Yeah,
Also, monkeys have tails. Why wouldn't George have a tail?
exactly. Now, Berenstain, bears. This is a stumper. Because of all those sweet country bears are firmly remembered to the world as Berenstain Bears. But no, the books always have been finally firmly been written as Berenstain, just like the authors who created them, Stan and Jan Berenstain. Now, I've actually, books have come across my hand uh, in my life with both spellings,
Now,
Bernstein and Bernstein.
this could go into that whole, because of the fact that a lot of these, I remember reading these books growing up in the South. And since we have that thick Southern accent, maybe we could have made it sound more like Bernstein than Bernstein. Because, you got those Bernstein bears.
Right,
So
but
that could be where that confusion comes in, I think. What do
and
you
I'm
think?
saying I've seen both spellings.
Really?
Yes,
Huh.
in the books.
Interesting.
Now, let's talk about Moneybags. Do you remember him wearing a monocle screwed up into his right eye?
Yes.
Nope. He's a dapper dresser in the tuxedo, spats and top hat, but his only other accessory besides loads of cash is a cane, rather than the stylish eyewear. Mr. Peanut from Planters Peanut Company, however, does have a monocle and it goes along with the top hat, cane, and spats. Maybe people are remembering Mr. Peanut's ensemble and automatically noting uh, that Uncle Moneybags has that dear, sweet, wonderful monocle under the due to apparently he still has his 2020 vision.
So we're getting the two kind of like mixed up in
Confused.
our minds and getting them like blended together, I guess you could say.
Yep,
And so we're picturing money bags with the
the monocle.
interesting.
Maybe.
Now, here's an interesting one, moving away from pop culture just for a bit, and we're going to talk about the Lindbergh kidnapping case, a very prominent piece of our history here in America. And I pretty much remember the baby never being seen again, as well as many others do. And that it sadly
Are you
remains.
giving away your age? I didn't know you were that old, Kim. That makes me ancient.
I'm saying from what I remember reading from history. I was obviously not around at the time that this happened. I'm just saying from what I remember hearing of history, being a big history buff, but from what I remember hearing, as well as a lot of the other world, that the baby was never seen again and that it was a cold case to this day. They never found the guy. Sadly, however, they did find the baby deceased in the woods. Um, and it was thought that it was killed the day it was abducted. Um, Now, 2 years later, Richard Hauptmann was found guilty of the crime and was executed via the electric chair after he was in incarceration for only 2 years. Though he claimed he was innocent, and the evidence against him was pretty damning. Though nearly 70 years later, a lot of evidence has been since shown as being planted to be circumstantial. Even Charles Lindbergh, who paid the ransom in person, couldn't pick him from a lineup. So why is there confusion here? Well, they did actually find the infant. It could still be a cold case because they don't know if this was really done by Richard or if it was someone else. So in that case, it could be a a cold case still. Um, then we have our favorite cartoon growing up, Wabbit season, Duck season. Now my
Emma
question,
Ethan.
is it Looney Tunes spelled like cartoons, or is it Looney Tunes spelled like a melody?
I've actually seen it spelled both ways.
You've always
Usually in
seen
the
it both
older
ways.
cartoons, it's Tunes.
Well, I've always thought it was tunes because this is a cartoon and these are characters. But according to what Warner Brothers says officially, it has always been Looney Tunes, like a melody. Um, but it makes sense that we may think that it's the other way around, being that it's a cartoon. And then we have the beautiful, some controversy behind, but here go either way, Mother Teresa. And the confusion here is that she was actually not declared a saint until 2016. And the push to have her to be declared as a sainthood, however, started around the time she died, which was in 1997. So it took nearly 20 years for her to become a saint. At the time of her death, the Pope, which was John Paul II, who was the Catholic head of state. However, it was not Pope Jean Paul II who gave her the sainthood, as people think, but it was actually the current Pope of Pope Francis that made the official declaration. So that's where the discrepancy comes from. Some think she was given sainthood right when she died in 97 by Pope John Paul II. But they petitioned, but it didn't go through till nearly 20 years later, to 2016. So yeah, that's the thing there. Moneybag73 is asking if we've looked at South America yet. Actually, we haven't. If you know of any South American Mandela effects, feel free to share them. These might be ones that we're unaware of. But tell us about the four so great, brother.
Okay. Now, Empire Strikes Back. How many people raise their hands when Luke tells them that Darth Vader killed Anakin Skywalker, and Darth Vader says, "Luke, I am your father." Show of hands. Guess what? Close but no cigar. The scene in question, even verified by James Earl Jones, the line is, "Luke, I am your father."
No, he doesn't even say.
I am your father.
Yes, he doesn't say Luke. He says, "No, I am your father." And then he's like, "No!" Yeah.
Here's another misremembrance. The evil queen turning to her elaborate mirror and saying, "I'm sorry, I have to go back and do the voice that my nieces love. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" I mean, heck, the mirror phrase even becomes the name of its own movie. But no, what she really said was, "Magic mirror on the wall." As if the kids couldn't clue in the fact that the mirror is magic. Once its ghastly face appears, it replies to her, "Yep, that would be magic, all right. But so there's no need to spell it out for us, right?" And not far from where I'm living right now is the actual birthplace of Smokey the Bear.
Really?
Now this one's a kicker to the feelies, and feels like my childhood has been denied here. Apparently, our favorite forest fire ranger, Smokey, is not Smokey the Bear, but rather just Smokey Bear. I would understand that in the 1970s comic book included "the" was in there, but even Smokey's website confirms the error of my ways. Seriously, Smokey Bear sounds more like a fancy dish description for the game hunters rather than the name Smokey the Bear.
That makes sense, because I remember even in the old commercials growing up, I remember him saying, "I'm Smokey the Bear, and only you can prevent forest fires."
Interesting to note, the voice of Smokey Bear back in the day when they first started doing those commercials, with the animated, was the voice of everybody's favorite gangster, James Cagney.
Really? James Cagney did the voice of
Smokey
Born
Bear.
on the 4th of July, James Cagney?
Yes. You
Really?
dirty rat, James Cagney. The white heat, James Cagney. Ma, I'm on the top of the world.
Yes. Moneybags is asking, how do we remember the Mr. Rogers song? This one
We
is
do. We
huge.
actually are going to be that up. Coming right up, Mr. Moneybags.
Yes. Now we're coming to my all-time favorite Disney movie of, I mean, I'm sure you can guess what it is, but the viewers don't know, so I'm going to let them know. We're going to talk about the castle in Cinderella. Many of us older kids may recall the day when Cinderella's castle was the main entrance to Disneyland. Unfortunately, this isn't true. While you can pass through the castle, the admission turnstiles have always been separate from the castle by the park's main street shops. Now that makes sense because I always remember Cinderella's castle being, kind of away from the entrance.
I've never
So,
been to Disneyland or Disney World. Sorry,
well,
I
I
can't
haven't
really.
either, but I've just, from pictures and videos and stuff. I remember Cinderella's castle being in the center of the park. Then we have King Henry VIII. Yes, he was a wonderful king, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yes. I want to get divorced. No, you can't get divorced. Okay, I'm going to go start my own religion then. Anyway,
Hey, I'm
um,
the Pope now. Okay, Pope, can King Henry wants to get divorced? Hey, Pope Henry the Eighth. Sure, go ahead, have yourself a divorce. Have a great day. Just don't kill any more women.
yes, I'd rather him kill the women than get divorced. Go
Right.
figure. But anyway, if you can remember, there's a picture of King Henry VIII gnawing on a turkey leg. Now, we're not sure where this memory comes from because we swear we've seen it too. However, there are no paintings like this that have ever been found. Maybe one of the many wives that he had killed off was done for interrupting a midnight snack and snapping a pic. Considering how long royalty had to sit for their portraits to be painted, that turkey leg would have gotten pretty nasty by the time they were finished. So maybe he stiffed the portrait artist and this was their retribution.
Maybe.
But to this day, there is actually no painting of this, even though several people believe that there was. Now, how many states do we have?
We have 50 states. Now, some people may be confused about that.
Yes, some people could have sworn they were taught we had 52, which I'm not sure where the other two states come from because I always learned we had 50. And it could be part of the confusion could be that we also do have other territories that belong to America, such as Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. We also have
Guam.
Guam. So people may be confusing these territories that we own as actually being states, but unfortunately, they are not being represented in the proper way. They are not states. They are their own territories. Now, Moneybags also asks, how do we remember the famous thinker statue? Fist on the forehead or flat hand under the chin? Is
Both.
it like this or like this?
Both.
I picture
And
him like this.
I can picture both of them due to the fact that there is a statue, I believe it's in Boston, that got blown up, and that when they put it back together, they repositioned the hand.
I'll have to look into that. But please tell us about a few movies that we
It's
don't
my
remember.
favorite topic. Okay. The evil gremlin leader, is he Stripe or is he Spike?
He's Stripe.
Remembered both ways, but officially he's Stripe.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, some of the confusion may lie with the fact that there are some licensed product out there with the name Stripe on them.
I think that's supposed to be Spike.
That's
But
supposed to be
see,
Spike.
I'm not sure why they would call him Spike because he's always been Stripe because he had that white mohawk.
Right.
And that's why he was named Stripe, because it was that stripe of white, kind of like a
Right. But
skunk.
also because of the white mohawk, they may have called him Spike.
Only Spike I know of is Buffy. So
Yes.
go figure.
Now, Tom Cruise slid into girls' hearts in a movie. And a certain iconic scene that's been constantly recreated. Cruise in the tidy whities, a dress shirt, and socks is one of the most iconic outfits of the 1980s, as well as one of the greatest music videos that ever was produced on MTV. But every time it's copied, a pair of dark shades always rounds out the ensemble. Turns out Cruz never did wear shades in the original scene, as many remembered, but yet it does fit.
Okay, I think I understand where the confusion is coming from here, because he is wearing what people think of and what people a lot of people do. And I remember I even can picture it, but it was Ray Bans,
Hmm.
which were very popular also in the 80s. And I think in Top Gun he wore Ray-Ban aviators. So I think that that might be where some of the confusion is coming in. People are, you know,
Well, also
confusing the
look at the
two.
movie poster too.
I have to go back and look at the movie poster. Is he wearing Ray-Bans in the movie poster?
Yes.
I'll have to go back and look at that.
Now, one of the most chilling movie greetings ever was uttered by Anthony Hopkins. His "Hello, Clarice" is eerie, certainly, but he never utters those words once in the film. The closest he comes to is a phone call at the end of the film while he says, "Well, Clarice, has the alarm started screaming?"
That's interesting because I do definitely remember him saying, hello, Clarice, when he first meets her.
Yes.
Now, what about the JFK assassination? How many people were in the car when he was shot? How many do you remember? You remember four?
Yep.
Well, many people can tell you where they were and what they were doing when he was shot. They don't always get that correct as far as how many were in the car. As Kennedy and his wife were in the rear of a car, and two secret agents were in front. But it also included John Conley and his wife Nellie, who were the governor of Texas at the time, and his wife. So, therefore, according to that, there was actually five.
6.
I'm sorry, six. My brain, sorry. Math hard. Math hard, works hard. Yes, it was six. It was actually six people. So we all usually forget that the governor of Texas and his wife Nellie were there. Now, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? As many remember, she was zooming around the world in a yellow trench coat and a yellow hat. Um, However, that banana trench coat never happened, as she was actually in a red trench coat, which, again, I do remember the red. I didn't see much of Carmen Sandiego. That was more my niece's time era. But what little I did watch of it with them, I do remember her being in red, not yellow.
Hmm.
Then we come to that catchy jingle that people seem to this day to remember incorrectly. Let's sing it. My
My
baloney.
baloney has a first name, it's Oscar. My baloney has a second name, it's Mayer. Oh, I love to eat it every day. You ask me what can I say? Oscar Mayer has a way with BLOOGNA.
Now, how many of you spelled mayor with two E's instead of one? Many distinctly remember it being Mayer or Meyer, though that isn't the case. And out of curiosity, how many of us even remember to sing baloney correct?
And then, of course, we go to one of my favorite bands, Queen.
Ooh, I love Queen. They are awesome.
Now, many of everyone will tell you that Freddie Mercury ends the song We are the champions. And then with a long held of the world. Nope, never happened. In fact, I was listening to that song just the other day. And it's just empty. Song simply ends with no time for losers because we are the champions. And it's pulled, champions is pulled out. And everybody wants to put of the world at the end.
That's how I remember him singing it that way.
Maybe he added the song when performing it live, but we can't remember the voice bit belting out of the world.
I know I've heard it that way. That is just too weird.
And I love Lucy. Lucy
Ah,
loves me. Did you know Ricky Ricardo's most quoted line of I Love Lucy is Lucy, you gotta explain it to do was never uttered on the show once. Turns out that all the time Ricky, played by Desi Arnaz, had been telling poor Lucy two phrases. Explain this if you can, and Lucy explain. Neither are quite as catchy though. Let's also think about the color chartreuse. What color comes to mind when we say chartreuse? No idea.
um, I think of like a reddish color, like a maybe like a maroon or a burgundy, bright, like a deep saturated red.
Right. Well, actually, it's a greenish yellow.
Interesting.
Yes. Now, for Mr. Runnybags up there, we're about ready to go into the Mr. Rogers controversy.
Yes, many of us can certainly sing along with gusto as we hear the Mr. Rogers theme song. But did you know odds are high that you've been singing it wrong? Turns out that it isn't, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, but it's actually, it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. We guess everyone's favorite neighborhood had no idea what your neighborhood was like after all. And why does that feel like a disappointment? I think I might just be crying a little bit on this one because I do remember it being in the neighborhood.
No, then of course we'd always have to go back to the Sesame Street song. Oh, who are the people in your neighborhood? They're in your neighborhood. That could also be confused with the Mr. Rogers neighborhood with "It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day in this neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly." Okay, I gotta stop before we get sued.
Yes. Well, they might demonetize us.
Yeah.
Okay, but there are certainly more of these out there, and we could go on and on. But many of these, are there any Mandela effects that you think we should have added to our list? If so, feel free to leave in the comments below. Another couple of that I can think of real quick is um, Fruit Loops versus Fruit Loops in the spelling, as well as Captain Crunch or Cap'n Crunch. Those are just a couple of other ones that I can think of. But if anybody out there can think of any others, feel free to leave them in the comments. And if you like what you see here, make sure you like and subscribe and hit notifications so you know when we're live again on YouTube. Next week, for a special Mother's Day episode, make sure you join us, and we will be discussing ghost mothers and children. However,
Yippee-yi-o, yippee-yi-yi, ghost mothers that weave lives.
yes. However, due to the holiday, we will be having this episode on Monday at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern.
Because everybody's got to be with their mother.
Yes, mother is most important. So don't skip out on mom just to watch our show. We will do it on Monday so you can have that special time with your mom. And
Queen said of the world at the end of the Live Aid concert.
See, I knew.
By the set, so.
Thank you. I thank you for pointing that out. I knew I remembered hearing that somewhere.
Yeah. What is your favorite Queen song?
Mine?
Yes.
Another one, Bites the Dust. What's yours?
Who Wants to Live Forever?
That one's good, but I have to say my second favorite My first, of course, is Another One Bites the Dust because of, I have a memory of hearing that one over and over again with
Mm-hmm.
some friends of this. Do you remember? I think it was Ernie that worked with Dad,
Mm-hmm.
and he was married
Eddie.
to Eddie, and he was married to Pat Tondre's sister.
Oh, yeah, that was Ernie. I'm sorry.
And I would go, and after Dad played baseball with them on Friday nights, I would go and spend the night at their house. And on the way home from um, from the game, we would be listening to Queen in the car, and I would ask him to play that song over and over again because I just loved Another One Bites the Dust. And to this day, it's still my favorite. But I do have to say, my second favorite is Princes of the Universe, also from Highlander.
Yes.
Yes, that is a can't cuss, but a kick a song.
Yes.
But
My other favorite of theirs is "I Want It All," and "The Game" is a good one too.
we can just all agree that they are just all around awesome. All their
Yes.
music is really good.
Each one of them, interesting to note, this is true. They each are professors. Brian May, the lead guitarist, is a professor of astronomy.
Interesting. That is very
I mean, if
interesting.
Queen did get get famous and kick off, they could have just got tenure at the university.
Well, there you go. But luckily they kicked off, and now they will be, infamously go down in history as one of the best rock bands ever. But I digress. Again, we thank everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you spending time with us talking about what we remember different as opposed of what the world, quote unquote, says it really is.
Hmm.
And we will see you all next week. Have a good night
And
and
always remember unpleasant nightmares.
sweet dreams, everybody. Good night.
Good night.